The desert wind moved like a ghost that afternoon, hot, restless, and humming through the broken stones of a dying land. Jace Tahoma, an Apache man hardened by hunger and years of drought, squinted against the glare. His boots sank into the cracked clay as he scanned the wide plain, searching for anything worth taking back to the tattered camp he shared with his wife, Mira. They had once lived among the mesas, tending a small herd and growing corn by a river that no longer existed. When the white miners came and the river was rerouted for their gold washing, Jace and Myra were left with nothing but dust and hunger. Now, their world was a lonely stretch of brown and red, where the wind carried the cries of coyotes and the memory of what used to be. Jace carried an old spade tied with a leather strip, a tool older than his marriage, when his father had used to dig graves and wells. He wasn't digging for water anymore. He was digging for hope. Mira waited nearby, sitting on a rock with her shawl drawn tight. Her dark hair was tangled by wind, her eyes tired but fierce. She watched him scrape at the clay, each sound of metal on stone like a heartbeat. "Jace," she called softly, "we should head back before the heat takes us. There's nothing left here." He shook his head. "Something's here, Myra. I feel it. The earth's been disturbed." She sighed, brushing dust from her skirt. "The earth has been disturbed everywhere, husband. People dig and bury what they can't carry. Bones, gold, lies." Jace stopped digging. His spade had struck something that didn't sound like stone. It gave a hollow clunk, echoing through the earth. His breath caught. Slowly, he scraped away the layers, revealing the outline of something wooden beneath the clay, a small box, darkened by time, edges eaten by soil. Mira rose and came closer, her hunger forgotten. "What is it?" Jace knelt, fingers trembling as he unearthed the rest. It was heavy, maybe a foot long, carved crudely but sealed tight. No markings, no locks, just a box buried deep, waiting for hands like his. He looked up at her, the sun painting fire across their faces. "Help me lift it." Together they pulled the box free, and it thudded onto the ground. A smell rose from it, old wood and something faintly metallic, like coins or blood. Jace took out his knife and pried at the edge. The wood groaned but did not break easily. "Wait," Myra said, stepping back. Her instincts whispered danger. It could be cursed. The settlers used to bury bad things, disease charms, spirit traps, things meant to stay hidden. Jace hesitated, his thumb tracing the line of an old scar across his knuckles. "Or it could be the thing that saves us. We've been living on roots and wind for months. I can't ignore a sign like this." He forced the blade deeper. The lid creaked open, slow and reluctant, as if the earth itself resisted what came next. Inside, wrapped in a layer of rotted fabric, lay a collection of strange items: a small silver cross, a torn map drawn in faded ink, and a sealed envelope marked with wax that had long since cracked. Underneath those, something else glinted in the dying light, metal bars, dull but unmistakably gold. Mira gasped, covering her mouth. "Jace, by the spirits, it's gold." He stared, disbelieving. The weight of it, the shimmer under the dust, it was real. Not pyrite, not fool's hope. Real gold. Enough to buy a ranch, maybe more. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind whispered around them, carrying the scent of distant rain. Then Mira said, voice trembling, "Someone buried this for a reason." "If they come back, they won't," Jace interrupted, though his eyes darted toward the horizon. "Whoever hid this is long gone. This is our chance, Mira. Maybe the only one we'll ever have." She knelt beside him, torn between fear and wonder. The earth doesn't give gifts without taking something in return. Jace's grip tightened on the box. "Then let it take what it must. I won't die poor on stolen land." They covered the box with a blanket and started toward camp, their shadows stretching across the clay. Behind them, the hole in the ground seemed to breathe like something alive had been unearthed. Something that watched them go by the time the sun fell. Jace couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't found the box. It had found them. That night, the wind howled like an angry spirit across the plains. Their campfire struggled against it, flickering weakly as if afraid to burn too brightly. Jace and Mira sat close together, the box between them, its presence both comforting and unsettling. The gold had weight, not just in metal but in meaning. It shimmered faintly in the firelight, whispering of a life they'd never known. For years they had lived in dust and hunger, scraping by on scraps. Now their fate seemed to rest in that box. Yet neither could touch it without trembling. Mira broke the silence first. "We should leave it buried again, Jace. The more I look at it, the more I feel the earth wanting it back." He shook his head, poking at the fire with a stick. "And return to what? Empty bellies? No horse? No roof? You saw that gold. There's enough to buy our lives back." Her voice dropped low, almost pleading. "Gold that deep in the clay. It wasn't meant for us. It was hidden. Maybe stolen. Maybe cursed. I've seen what greed does to men. It turns them to dust faster than drought." Jace looked into the flames, the light dancing across the sharp lines of his face. "Curses are for the fearful. We've lived cursed long enough, Myra. Maybe this is balance. Maybe it's time the land gave back." He reached into the box again, brushing the gold aside until his fingers touched the brittle envelope. The red wax seal had cracked completely now, revealing a faint mark burned into the paper, a symbol shaped like a serpent swallowing its own tail. "What's that?" Myra whispered. "I don't know. Some settler marking, maybe." He slid a finger under the flap and unfolded the letter carefully. The paper was fragile, yellowed with time. Inside, a neat script written in ink that had faded to brown. "To whomever finds this, the gold is not mine. It was taken from men who took lives. Blood bought it, and blood will claim it again. If you seek to use it, beware the one who follows. He wears the serpent mark, and he never forgets." Jace's hand tightened around the letter. He read it twice, his jaw set like stone. "What does it mean?" Mira asked. He didn't answer right away. His eyes wandered to the darkness beyond the fire, where the desert stretched wide and quiet. "It means someone killed for this gold, and someone might come looking for it." Mira's heart beat faster. "Then we can't keep it, Jace. We should bury it again tonight." But Jace's voice was firm, deep with quiet defiance. "No. If the gold came from blood, then maybe it belongs to the blood that still lives. Ours. We've lost enough." He took one of the small bars and held it up, watching the firelight flicker across its surface. The sight was mesmerizing power, promise, redemption. "Tomorrow I'll take it to town. There's a trader who still owes me favor. We can sell a piece, get food, tools, start again." Mira's stomach twisted with unease. "And if someone recognizes it? Then I'll deal with them." The fire cracked sharply, scattering embers into the night air. Mira turned away, her eyes glistening. She had seen that look in men before, the look of someone who thought he could outmatch fate. When she finally spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "Do you ever think the earth keeps secrets because it knows we can't handle them?" Jace smiled faintly, though there was no joy in it. "Maybe, but secrets don't fill empty stomachs." He folded the letter and tucked it into his shirt, close to his chest. The serpent mark burned in his mind like a brand. As the night deepened, they lay beside the fire, but sleep didn't come easy. The wind carried strange sounds, whispers, footsteps that might have been coyotes or might not. The desert had ways of listening. Mira dreamed of clay and blood, of the box sinking back into the earth, pulling her with it. She woke before dawn, her heart racing. Jace was already up, strapping the box to his saddlebag. The faintest glow of morning painted the horizon. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice trembling. "To the trading post by Dry Creek," he said. "I'll sell 1 bar. I'll be back before sundown." Mira wanted to stop him, to take the box and throw it back into the hole they'd dug, but his determination scared her more than the gold itself. As he mounted his horse, she caught a glimpse of something strange, a faint tattoo or mark beneath his collarbone. A serpent, inked long ago, coiled around his shoulder. Her breath caught. "Jace." "That mark, how long have you had it?" He frowned, confused. "Since before you met me. My father's tribe had it for protection. But Myra remembered the letter's warning, the one who follows wears the serpent mark." And as Jace rode toward the sunrise, the wind whispered through the clay once more, carrying with it the sound of something stirring beneath the ground, something that wasn't finished with them yet. The sun rose over the desert like a blade of fire, slicing through the cold dawn haze. Jace Tahoma rode toward Dry Creek, his horse kicking up trails of dust that shimmered like smoke. The box wrapped in an old cloth and tied to his saddle seemed to grow heavier with each mile. He had been to Dry Creek before, but never with something that could change his life. The small town was a place where desperate men traded what little they had, and where greed breathed thicker than dust. When Jace reached the edge of town, the wooden signs creaked in the wind. A few miners staggered out of the saloon, their faces gray with whiskey and disappointment. The scent of sweat, tobacco, and stale beer filled the air. He tied his horse near the old trading post, a crooked building with faded letters that once spelled, "C. Fowler's Mercantile." The windows were coated with sand, and a single lantern burned weakly by the door dot inside. The trader, Caleb Fowler, looked up as Jace entered. Fowler was a thin, gray-bearded man who had dealt with everyone's settlers, natives, thieves, and ghosts alike. "Well, I'll be damned," Fowler said, squinting. "Jace Tahoma, son of the desert himself. Haven't seen you since the drought took your land." Jace nodded. "Got something to trade." Fowler leaned on the counter, smirking. "You always say that, but it's usually rabbit pelts or a busted rifle. What's different this time?" Jace unwrapped the cloth slowly, revealing 1 gold bar, its dull surface gleaming faintly in the dusty light. Fowler's expression froze. "Where'd you get that?" "Found it," Jace said flatly. Fowler swallowed, his eyes darting toward the door. "You don't just find gold like that, boy. Not unless it's stolen or worse. I didn't steal it." Fowler stared at the bar, then back at Jace. "You listen to me. A man came through here 3 years ago, said he lost a shipment of gold somewhere out east. Claimed it belonged to the Serpent Brotherhood. Folks thought he was mad, talking about secret groups and blood debts. But when they found him dead near the canyon, throat cut clean. No one laughed." Jace's pulse quickened. "You saying this gold belongs to them?" Fowler lowered his voice. "I'm saying men like that don't forget. They mark what's theirs. And if they buried it deep for a reason." Jace slid the bar closer. "Can you sell it or not?" Fowler hesitated, then sighed. "I'll melt it down, change its shape. No one'll know. But you best be gone before sundown. Someone's been asking questions about strangers lately, especially ones with old tribal marks." Jace's eyes narrowed. "What kind of mark?" "The serpent," Fowler said quietly. "Coiled, eating its own tail." Jace froze. The same mark that was tattooed beneath his collarbone. He left the gold with Fowler and walked out into the bright, punishing sun. The wind felt colder now, unnatural. Across the street, a man sat on a black horse near the saloon, watching him. He wore a long coat despite the heat, had brim low over his eyes. When Jace looked his way, The man smiled slow and deliberate before turning his horse and riding off toward the canyon trail. Jace's instinct screamed danger. He mounted his own horse and turned toward home, urging it into a gallop. The desert blurred by in waves of red and gold. Every time he looked back, the horizon seemed to shimmer with movement shadows that didn't belong to the wind dot by the time he reached camp. The sun was low. Mira was waiting, pacing by the fire. She ran to him as he dismounted. "You're late." "I thought something happened." "Something did," he said grimly. He threw down his saddlebag. "There's a man following me. Maybe more than one. Fowler said they wear the serpent mark." Mira's face drained of color. "The same as yours?" He nodded. "It's older than me. My father said it meant strength, the cycle of life. But what if it meant something else?" They sat together in silence, the desert turning red as the sun bled out behind the hills. The gold box lay near the fire, casting an eerie reflection in the flames. Mira spoke softly, her voice trembling. "If that man finds us, Jace, what will you do?" He looked at her, his eyes dark and steady. "I'll do what I must to protect what's ours." The wind rose again, carrying the smell of iron and rain. In the distance, a lone coyote howled, its cry echoing through the empty land and far beyond the ridges of clay. The man on the black horse stopped to study their campfire's glow. He reached into his coat, pulling out a silver medallion shaped like a serpent devouring its tail. He smiled. "They finally opened it," he whispered. The moon rose red that night, casting long shadows over the desert. Jace and Myra sat close to the fire, the crackle of flames the only sound between them. Neither spoke of the man on the black horse, though his image lingered in their minds like a ghost refusing to leave. The gold box sat beside them, wrapped tightly in cloth. Its presence seemed to breathe alive, waiting, patient. Mira kept glancing toward the darkness. "Jace," she whispered, "what if Fowler was right? What if those men come for us?" He stirred the fire, jaw tight. "Then they'll find we don't scare easy." "You talk like a warrior," she said softly. "But even warriors fall when they fight shadows." He said nothing. The mark on his shoulder itched again, burning faintly under the skin, as if reacting to something unseen. Sometime after midnight, the horses began to grow restless. Their nervous snorts broke the quiet, and Mira stood quickly. "Something's out there." Jace grabbed his rifle and moved toward the edge of the firelight, scanning the dark ridges. The wind carried a faint metallic clink, the sound of spurs against stone. Then a voice came, smooth and deep, echoing across the sand. "Easy there, Apache. I mean you no harm." "Not yet." A figure emerged from the shadows, a tall man wearing a long black coat that shimmered with dust. His hat was pulled low, and a faint scar cut across his cheek. Around his neck hung a silver medallion shaped like a serpent swallowing its own tail. Mira stepped back, clutching her shawl. Jace leveled his rifle. "Who are you?" The man smiled thinly. "Name's Redden. You might call me a collector." "Collector of what?" "Debts," Redden said, his voice calm, eyes gleaming. "And it seems you've dug up something that doesn't belong to you." Jace's finger tensed on the trigger. "We found it buried." "No name, no claim." "Everything buried has an owner," Redden replied. "That gold was meant to stay beneath the clay. My brothers, those who carried the serpent mark before you, spilled their blood to hide it." Mira's breath caught. "You wear the same mark." "Why? What does it mean?" Redden's eyes drifted to Jace's shoulder. "Ah, you bear it too? Then perhaps you already know." "I don't," Jace said coldly. "It was my father's. He said it protected us." Redden stepped closer, the firelight revealing the depth of his grin. "Your father was part of us once. The Serpent Brotherhood men who traded loyalty for gold and power. But he turned away, tried to bury what we found together. That box was his sin. Jace felt his heart hammer against his ribs. You're lying. Am I? Redden's tone was almost kind. He thought he could cleanse himself by hiding it, by carving the mark onto his son and calling it protection. But curses run deeper than names. Boy, the fire crackled between them, throwing sparks into the air. Mira's voice trembled. What do you want from us? The gold, Redden said simply. All of it. Return it and I'll leave you breathing. Jace's jaw tightened. You'll take it over my dead body. Redden's smirk darkened. That can be arranged. Before he could move, Jace fired. The rifle cracked through the night, echoing across the desert hills. Redden stumbled back, but when the smoke cleared, he was still standing. The bullet had torn through his coat, but he didn't bleed. Mira gasped. Jace. He's alive, Redden finished, brushing the dust from his chest. The desert takes care of its own, and we belong to it. He raised his hand, and for a brief, chilling moment, the serpent medallion on his chest glowed faintly red. The fire flickered, dimming as if suffocated. The horses screamed, breaking their reins and bolting into the darkness. Enough games, Redden said softly. The gold belongs to the earth. Give it back or she'll take more than your souls. He turned then, walking back into the dark as silently as he'd come. His voice drifted on the wind behind him. You have until dawn. The fire slowly regained its strength, casting trembling light over Jace and Mira's faces. Mira clutched his arm. What did he mean? Dawn for what? Jace stared into the flames, his face unreadable. For a reckoning, he said quietly. He pulled the box closer, setting it between them once again. The serpent mark on his skin still glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. I'm not giving it back, he murmured. If this gold killed my father, it won't kill me. We'll end it. Mira shook her head. You can't fight something that's not flesh. Jace looked toward the horizon, where a faint, red dawn began to creep up. Then I'll fight the earth itself if I have to. Somewhere beyond the dunes, the sound of a horse whinnied low and distant. Redden was waiting. And dawn was coming. The dawn broke over the desert with a pale, haunting light. Smoke still lingered from the dying fire, curling lazily into the air. Nakoa sat silently on the edge of the bluff, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the stranger had vanished hours ago. Behind him, Clara stirred awake inside their small tent, clutching her shawl tight against the chill. What did he want, Nakoa? She asked softly, stepping toward him. Her voice trembled not from fear of the cold, but from the weight of what had happened. Nakoa's jaw tightened. He wasn't a man, he said, his voice deep and steady. He carried the mark of the serpent, a spirit of greed and vengeance. I've seen it before. Clara frowned. A spirit? He turned toward her, his dark hair blowing across his face. The beads and feathers woven into it glimmered faintly in the new sun. Among my people, Nakoa continued, the silver serpent is a warning. It binds the soul of anyone who steals from the earth's sacred heart. He came here seeking gold, not peace. Clara felt a chill run down her spine. Then why come to us? Because he knows, Nakoa said, standing tall. He knows about the mine near the canyon. The one my father sealed with stone and prayer. She stepped closer. You mean the place you said no one should ever go? Nakoa nodded grimly. The mine was cursed by the elders after men died trying to take what was not theirs. The serpent spirit guards it still. But now, he looked down at his hands, the memory of the stranger's medallion glinting in his mind. Now it's awake again. Clara's heart pounded. Then we have to leave. We can't stay here, Nakoa. He looked at her, his eyes dark as storm clouds. If we run, it will follow. The spirit always does until its hunger is fed. I must end it before it takes everything. She grabbed his arm. You can't fight something like that alone. But Nakoa only placed a hand on her cheek, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. You gave me a home when I had nothing, he whispered. Now I must protect it. That's what a man does. Tears filled her eyes, but she nodded. Then I'm going with you. Before he could protest, she had already begun packing. The determination in her movements reminded him of a warrior's resolve. He couldn't stop her, and part of him didn't want to. By midday, they rode toward the canyon. The desert stretched endlessly before them, orange hills, whispering wind and circling vultures high above. The air grew heavier the closer they got, and the ground itself seemed to hum with something ancient and angry. When they reached the old mine, the entrance was half buried in sand and stone, marked by faded symbols carved into the rock's warnings in the Apache tongue. Nakoa dismounted and placed his hand over one of the carvings. Father, he murmured, forgive me. Clara watched him gather dry sage and light it with flint. The sweet smoke rose like a prayer. What are you doing? She asked. Calling the spirit, he said. If it's truly awakened, it will answer. The wind began to pick up. The sky darkened, though no clouds formed. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and from the shadows of the mine came a faint, hissing whisper. Clara gasped as a shape began to emerge, a coiling serpent made of silver light, its eyes glowing like molten gold. Nakoa stepped forward, his chest bare, the symbols of his tribe painted in ash across his skin. You have no power here, he declared in Apache. This land belongs to the spirits of my ancestors. The serpent hissed louder, its voice echoing in their minds. All men desire what is beneath the earth. Nakoa's grip tightened on his spear. Not all men. Some protect it. With a roar, the serpent lunged. Nakoa thrust the spear into its form, the air exploding with blinding light. Clara screamed, shielding her face. When the light faded, the serpent was gone. Only the silver medallion lay on the ground, broken in two. Nakoa fell to his knees, breathing hard. Clara ran to him, clutching his face in her hands. Nako, are you all right? He looked up at her, sweat and ash on his skin. It's done, he said softly. But the curse, it's not over yet. Behind them, the desert wind whispered again like a warning carried through time. The sun rose heavy and red over the canyon, painting the world in fire and dust. Nakoa stood barefoot upon the trembling earth, his chest rising with each deep, steady breath. His muscles ached, his heart thundered, but his spirit untamed, rooted in the bones of his ancestors, remained unbroken. Beside him, Maren clutched the small wooden box they had found buried beneath the clay, its edges now blackened from the night's chaos. The air still smelled of smoke and storm, of something ancient that had been disturbed. Nakoa, she whispered, her voice trembling, you said the serpent was bound beneath this land. Then why does the ground burn? He didn't answer at first. He crouched low, pressing his hand to the cracked desert soil. Heat pulsed from below, slow and rhythmic like a heartbeat. Because, he said softly, it's not dead yet. A faint glow bled through the fissures in the clay. The gold bars inside the box shimmered unnaturally, as if drawing breath from the serpent's curse. Nakoa knew then the treasure was not wealth. It was bait. Maren's eyes widened. You mean someone put that box here? To wake it? Nakoa nodded. Long ago, when the white men came, they dug too deep. They unearthed what they could not control. The serpent's curse lives in that gold, it feeds on greed. That man in the black coat, his jaw tightened. He knew. Thunder rumbled from the horizon, though no storm clouds lingered. The sound seemed to crawl across the desert floor, low and angry. Nakoa rose, his long black hair catching the wind, his turquoise armband glinting in the dawn light. "We end this today," he said. They rode hard through the canyon where the serpent had last appeared. The trail wound between sheer cliffs painted with petroglyphs, warriors, suns, and coiling snakes. The images seemed alive in the morning light. At the canyon center lay the mining shaft, the same place where the stranger's men had once unearthed the cursed gold. Half-buried tools, rotting wagons, and bones told a story of those who'd never left. Nakoa dismounted, tying his horse to a dead juniper. "Maren, stay behind me." The air grew hotter the deeper they went, until every breath tasted like ash. Nakoa's bare chest gleamed with sweat as he stepped into the cavern's mouth. His tribal jewelry clinked faintly with each careful stride. At the heart of the mine, the silver serpent's form began to take shape again, coiling from mist and flame, its scales glittering like molten metal. "You cannot kill what was born from men's desire," a voice hissed from everywhere and nowhere. Maren gasped. The sound didn't come from the serpent, but from behind them. The man in the black coat stood at the tunnel's edge, his serpent medallion glowing. "You've done well, Apache," he sneered. "You brought it what it wanted." The box in Maren's hands pulsed with light. Nakoa's eyes narrowed. In a heartbeat, he understood the serpent didn't want gold. It wanted life. He lunged, snatching the box from Maren and hurling it into the heart of the mine. The serpent screamed, its form shattering into sparks that filled the air like fireflies. The cavern shook violently, stones raining from above. "Run!" Nakoa roared, grabbing Maren's arm. They sprinted through the collapsing tunnel as flames licked at their heels. The man in the black coat tried to follow, but the earth split beneath him, swallowing his screams into the abyss. When they burst into daylight, the ground convulsed one final time. Then silence. The canyon lay still again. Maren fell to her knees, breathless, staring at the smoke rising from the fissures. "Is it over?" Nakoa looked back, his chest heaving, eyes distant. "No curse ends easily," he said. "But the earth will rest for now." He turned toward the horizon. The gold was gone. The serpent silenced. But Nakoa felt something stir deep within his spirit, a promise, a warning, perhaps both. As the wind swept across the clay, carrying the scent of fire and redemption, Maren took his hand. They had found the box beneath the earth, and it had nearly destroyed them. Yet in its ruin, it had revealed something greater. What truly lies buried within a man's soul is far more dangerous than any curse of gold. Nakoa glanced at the morning sun. "The desert has taken back what was hers," he said quietly. "Now we start again." And as the fire beneath the clay cooled, two figures scarred, weary, and bound by fate walked into the light of a new day. The wind carried the scent of burnt clay and sagebrush across the canyon. The fire had died, but the earth still smoked where the serpent had once roared. Nakoa stood at the edge of the fissure, his chest bare, streaked with ash and blood. His long black hair clung to his back in damp strands, and the turquoise on his arm caught the pale morning light like a tear. Maren stood behind him, the once glowing box now nothing more than a pile of charred wood. She had not spoken since the ground had sealed over the mine, burying the stranger and the curse beneath it. Only silence filled the desert now, an eerie, final kind of peace. Nakoa looked down into the crack where the fire still smoldered. "The serpent sleeps again," he murmured. "But its hunger lingers." Maren's voice came soft and trembling. "Do you think it will come back?" He didn't answer at once. He reached into the pouch hanging from his neck, a small deer-hide bag that carried dust from his ancestors' burial ground. He opened it, letting the gray powder fall into the fissure. "Everything returns, Maren. The earth never forgets what was buried." She closed her eyes, tears mixing with desert dust. "Then what happens to us?" He turned to her, his eyes dark as obsidian, yet filled with something gentle. "We live," he said simply. "That's all the desert ever asks." They began their journey home on foot. Their horses had fled in the chaos, leaving only footprints that vanished with the wind. The sun climbed higher, merciless but pure, and Nakoa walked beside Maren, silent except for the low whisper of sand shifting beneath their boots. Hours passed. The horizon shimmered like molten glass. But when they reached the edge of their old camp, the fire pit was still warm, as if waiting for them. Nakoa crouched, gathering dry brush and kindling. Soon smoke rose again, this time not from battle, but from life beginning anew. As they sat beside the fire, Maren looked into the flames and said, "When we found that box, I thought it was our chance to stop being poor, to live without fear." Nakoa's gaze followed the sparks as they climbed toward the sky. "It gave us fear instead of comfort. But maybe that's what the gold was for, to remind us that wealth is never free. Everything has a spirit, even greed." She leaned against him then, her head resting on his shoulder. "And what spirit do we follow now?" Nakoa smiled faintly. "The one that survives." Night fell. Coyotes called in the distance. The desert was vast again, and though the darkness stretched forever, there was peace in it. For the first time in weeks, Nakoa felt the land breathe with him instead of against him. As the fire dwindled, Maren traced her fingers along the scars on his chest. "You fought for us," she whispered. "But I still don't understand, why didn't you keep one of the gold bars? We could have gone anywhere." Nakoa's eyes stayed fixed on the dying flames. "Because that gold wasn't ours," he said quietly. "It belonged to the earth, to the serpent's curse. And if we kept it, we would have never left that mine alive." She nodded slowly, realizing the truth in his voice. The weight of the world's oldest lesson greed's shadow had passed through them and left them changed. As dawn crept across the sky, Nakoa rose and looked toward the horizon. The desert stretched endlessly before them, painted gold by the rising sun, not the false gold of the serpent, but the light of a new beginning. Maren stood beside him, her shawl fluttering like a broken wing healed by morning. "Where will we go?" she asked. He glanced toward the mountains, their peaks veiled in mist. "There's land beyond those hills, land untouched by mines or greed. We'll build there. Plant roots deep enough that no curse can reach them." Maren smiled through her tears. "And if the serpent wakes again?" Nakoa's jaw set firm, but there was a calm in his voice. "Then it will find me waiting." The desert wind stirred, carrying with it the faint whisper of something old and eternal. Nakoa turned his gaze upward. For a moment, he thought he saw the serpent shape in the clouds, a reminder, not a threat. A balance restored. He wrapped his arm around Maren as they walked toward the rising sun, two souls shaped by fire and clay, bound by what they had endured. Behind them, the fissure where the serpent had slept began to cool, its last smoke curling into the sky like a prayer. The desert would remember their names, the man who faced the fire beneath the clay, and the woman who walked beside him through ashes and light. And though no one in the towns would ever know the truth, the wind would whisper their story across the mesas for generations. The poor Apache and his wife found gold beneath the earth. But what they unearthed instead was the price of every soul that forgets the weight of the world. And with that, the desert swallowed the last echo of the serpent's curse, leaving only silence, love, and the sound of footsteps fading toward forever.